And now, live from RSN Studios, this is the Forest City Tribune Podcast. And now, here's your host, John Thomas Hill. And welcome to the show. It is Saturday evening, the 5th of July. A day that will live in infamy. For me personally, I won't go into that, but let's just say the 5th of July is not a favorite day of mine, and 10 years ago was certainly a day that will live in infamy, and that's all I'm going to say about it. This past week, as I adjust my headset because it's slipping off my head, we had two major Supreme Court decisions. The first was the Hobby Lobby case. Yes, there's the other Mennonite case that was similar to it that was basically thrown into it together, but everybody pretty much knows it's the Hobby Lobby case. That certain contraceptives, basically what it says is the Obamacare mandate, which basically says that businesses have to allow their insurance policies to cover contraceptives. In this case, if a religious, closely held business, family-owned business, could conceivably be allowed to have to be waived from this. Basically, what it means is that if you're a company that is family-oriented, family-owned, and very closely held, you can appeal the mandate, and you don't have to have insurance that covers contraceptives. The biggest problem I have with this is the fact that Hobby Lobby is not a small company. Hobby Lobby is a very big company. They have over 500 stores nationwide, thousands of employees, and they basically they covered this until Obamacare came along. And they said, oh, all of a sudden we find this out. Oh, we don't want to cover that. I smell a rat here, okay? First of all, if you're a business that signs up to have an insurance company provide your employees with insurance, and you don't know every little detail, or someone in your company doesn't know every little detail, there's a problem there. And it seems oh so convenient that when Obamacare's mandate comes down, you have to cover contraceptives, that you all of a sudden look at your policy and say, hey, this smells to high heaven. And the Supreme Court pretty much, on a 5-4 vote, said, well, they don't have to cover it. They don't have to have it. Look, it basically covers morning pill-like things. But now they've expanded it. Now you've got these Catholic-owned businesses who are going, well, we want to be an exception to where nobody can we don't have to cover any contraceptive. All right? Here's my problem. First of all, companies don't provide insurance out of their heart. They take a part of your paycheck, and that part of your paycheck goes to pay for that insurance. They get as a group policy. And a group policy means that they can offer the company offering the insurance can offer a lower rate to groups. Okay? Does the company pay for part of it? Sure. But the bulk of it's generally employees. It's like this. If I am paying for a group trip to go to Carowinds, and I don't want to go on the, and let's say that I'm Seventh-day Adventist, and I don't want my money to cover the meal money that I cover. Basically, I say it's a group thing where the meals are provided and all that. But I find out. By the way, Seventh-day Adventists don't eat meat, or supposedly are not supposed to eat meat. And I find out that part of the meal is going to be meat, and that the meal's already paid for. And I say, well, I don't want my money to go to pay for meat. And that means nobody else can have meat, Excuse me for a second. Very professional of me, I know, but it's I'm doing this for free. It's not supposed to be professional. It's just a schmuck in a apartment in downtown Rutherford, North Carolina, in the Southern Foothills, doing some podcast because he doesn't have anything else better to do on a Saturday evening. Okay. The problem is that this is going to open up a huge can of worms. Next thing you know, you're going to have businesses saying, hey, we don't want to pay, it's our religious conviction, we don't have to pay women the same as men. Or it's going to open up a can of worms, in my opinion. Now, whether it really does or not, whether it's overblown, that remains to be seen. But there's so much potential abuse of this. And I don't think the Supreme Court fully got around to it. The fact of the matter is, do you want unwanted babies? Okay? That's the problem here. Is that, I don't want to pay for abortions. Look, I don't like abortion either. The reason I'm pro-choice is that I know if it's done illegally, there's a good chance the mom could very well be severely hurt or possibly die. And there's no chance of, to me it's like this. The pro-life movement or anti-choice movement, anti-abortion movement, what do you want to call them, has been going about it the wrong way. The Pandora's box of the sexual revolution is already open. You can't stop people from having sex. You'll never get that to happen. Well, you want them to hold it, deal with responsibility. Yeah, I don't want to see unwanted children with parents that aren't ready, because we have enough problems as it is. Okay? And the abortion question is very complex, and outlawing it does not mean it's going to stop. In fact, it just means it'll probably be a whole lot easier to get because, hey, police have a hard enough time as it is. Do you think they're going to worry about abortion clinics? Maybe for the first few months when the law comes down, but after a while, and there are ways around it, folks. Trust me. The other decision was a union case, which the organized labor movement in this country is very worried about. Basically, it dealt with some home health care nurses who were not happy that they were having to pay union dues, and the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. The problem with this issue is that, in a way, after reading the case, I could see how the reason why they ruled, but there is a definite movement in conservative circles to destroy the union movement, and a lot of people don't realize that are Republicans and conservatives, but are basically just average working Joes, that if they completely annihilate organized labor as a political force in this country, who's to stop the Republicans from going, we don't need minimum wage. We'll just get rid of it. And now instead of you making $12 an hour at your job at Walmart, they can cut you down to $3 an hour if they really wanted to. If they take away the minimum wage laws, which is stupid, really. But here's the problem. that the conservatives don't see. We are producing more than we have ever produced before in this country's history. Our productivity is amazingly high. But wage levels haven't kept up. They were keeping up until Reagan came along, and then it went to hell. Now, my mom, God rest her soul, was not an economic theorist, an economic major or anything like that. She never even went to college. She did graduate from high school, but she didn't major in economics at college or anything like that. But she had a brilliant economic theory. If people aren't making money to buy stuff, stuff ain't going to be sold. And that's the problem. If people don't have enough money to buy stuff, then sales aren't going to be that good. And it's going to spiral downward, falling downward and downward. Everywhere there has been a minimum wage hike, whether it be a city or state, there has been economic growth. And there's a reason why the move to boost the minimum wage has gained a lot of traction, even among some conservatives. Hell, the International Monetary Fund said we should raise it. And they're not exactly a liberal institution. You've got foreign economic powers that are saying, hey, you know what? The United States should raise its minimum wage because they're not paying their people enough to actually buy the stuff we're sending them. Now, will it be raised anytime soon? Not with this Congress. And this is something that could help the Democrats if they can convince the people that the Republicans are the ones that are holding this up. And the Republicans will bring out their tried and true argument. Oh, but if we raise minimum wages, that's going to be a burden on businesses, and that's going to shut a lot of businesses down. Well, guess what? A lot of those businesses are barely hanging on as it is. And, yeah, whenever they raise the minimum wage, some businesses do go out of business. But in the long run, businesses will get, the ones that do survive will become stronger. New businesses will come in, and things will be better. Every time we've had a minimum wage increase, the economy has gotten better. Now you're saying, well, after the last one we had, the economy went downhill. That wasn't because of minimum wage, folks. That was because of the economic bubble burst on Wall Street. It wasn't because of Sally down at the local Walmart bagging your groceries. That wasn't the reason for it. It was the guys on Wall Street, the big financial institutions. That was the reason we had the economic collapse of 2008. And that could have been a hell of a lot worse. But the fact is that we need to tie in minimum wage increases to cost of living increases. It should have been done a long time ago. Because think about this. Back in 1980, all you really had to have was power, a roof over your head, power, running water, and that was it. TV, radio, sure. They would, to keep track of what's going on. Now you've got, and of course, telephone. Now you've got mobile phones. Now you've got internet, which is pretty much a utility, a necessity in this day and age. Especially as businesses who bill you want to get away from sending you a paper bill and send it to you in an email and have you pay your bill online. And where all your banking is starting to become done online. And mobile phones are becoming, landlines are starting to go away. Mobile phones are essential. And I could go into a real rant about the lack of mobile data capacity in America, and how AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon and all these others are screwing themselves over and screwing the American people over not expanding their capabilities. And yes, government's part of the problem, but big business is also part of the problem as well. But I won't go there. We'll do that for another time. But it's time to understand that we have to have an organized labor movement in this country to make sure the average Joe and Jill working to make a living on the lower end of this economic spectrum has a fighting chance. Because if we continue with this economic inequality that we're seeing, we're going to become a third world nation. And what happens when you have people who feel like their lives are insignificant because they can barely make it, they can barely put food on the table, they can barely keep the tin roof shack they've got, they tend to go, you know what, we're going to storm up the hill and go after those rich folks. Guess what, rich folks? Guess what, 1%? You want to know who the greatest proponent of socialism is? You guys. Because you don't read your history. There's a reason why Franklin Delano Roosevelt put in Social Security, and there's a reason why that social programs became popular, because they kept people from going to socialism, to communism. Because, hey, if they got a little bit of a boost just to keep their head above water, maybe, just maybe, they'll stay away from listening to communist propagandists thinking that America would be better off becoming the United Socialist States of America. Excuse me for just a second. Now, on to the Anthony Cumia thing. I used to be a big fan of the Opie and Anthony Show. It's not that I've begun to hate the show. It's just that I don't listen as much as I used to. I used to really love the show, but I knew Anthony's views on race in this country were kind of very conservative. I feared what was coming this past week when he had an incident. The show was off for the holiday. They took a full week off, and in his spare time away from the show, he was photographing something in Times Square. I don't know why. And apparently a black woman was in the frame and didn't like having her picture taken and accosted Anthony Cumia. And Anthony Cumia took a couple more pictures because, I guess to document what he felt like he was going to be attacked. And Anthony Cumia claims 5 other African American gentlemen accosted him, and the only side we have is Anthony Cumia's side, and he went off on Twitter and he went off and raged and rampaged and threw around the word savage and a few others that pretty much could be conceived by some as being racist. I don't think Anthony Cumia is an out and out, hell, fire and brimstone breathing racist. And I've listened to plenty of his rants and such, and I think the problem is people don't understand that where he's coming from, but they don't care where he's coming from. If you call an African American a savage in a tweet, you're going to get in trouble for it. Because even though it wasn't during your show, even though you were not working on SiriusXM's, you were not clocked in and working at SiriusXM, you're still representing the show by your tweets. And thus, SiriusXM probably heard from a lot of sponsors saying, hey, if you don't fire this guy, we're going to yank our ads from that show and probably from other channels as well. It sucks, but in today's social media, if your employer finds out that you're saying stuff that is detrimental to the company's image, you could be in trouble. And Anthony Cumia, I think, will be just fine. He'll go into podcasting. He'll start his own podcast and work out of his home and get a following. Plenty of people will follow him, and he'll have He'll do other stuff and may eventually be coming back to the show. If he shows some contrition and enough time passes, that he may come back. I don't know. But let's put what he did aside for a second and talk about the realities of social media. I used to work at Walmart. And on my Facebook and on my Twitter, sometimes I would basically critique some of the things that went on there. And some of the posting, I would sometimes share posts from groups who were very, very critical of Walmart's labor policies. Did that get me fired? Officially, no. Unofficially, I've wondered about that. I do know that at one time there was someone who was, I shall not name, who I worked with, who was a snitch, a well-known snitch, who would friend people on Facebook, find out dirt that this person was saying about people at Walmart or Walmart in general, run tell management, and management would basically retaliate. This is not something brand new. This happens in other workplaces. People have been written up for that, what they've said, directly, and in some cases, probably in my case, indirectly. In some cases, directly or indirectly fired. Does it make it right? No. Don't you have the right to go home after a tough day of work and vent? The problem is there's a big difference between venting to your wife or husband or kids or friends or whatever and venting on Facebook and Twitter, because most of those conversations that take place with your wife or your husband or your kids or your family or your friends will never ever be seen or heard by your bosses. What you post on Facebook, what you post on Twitter, what you shoot on Instagram, what you put on, anywhere else, any other social media. There is the risk it could come back to haunt you. Why? Because companies defend their image. And they are going to be ruthless about it. They feel like that if any employee criticizes the company on social media, that it could hurt the image. And it is well known that many companies have people that will basically data mine to find out who has been critical of the company on social media. There are companies who require their employees to give them their Facebook, to friend them on Facebook and Twitter, to give them the passwords. Now, I won't ever do it. And I've made the mistake of friending people at work on Facebook that I shouldn't have, but the important thing is, if you're going to vent, the best place to do it is somewhere where nobody else is going to see it. And you may take all the precautions in the world to try and make it anonymous, but it's the people that are looking for this stuff, if you're not careful, can find the clues and bring it back to you. The best place I can tell you is to put your own personal diary, vent into that, and go off on that. Now, I work at Lowe's now. Pretty good place, but it's not perfect. And, of course, you're going to have customers from time to time that really honk you off. It's retail. But if I were to go, well, this lady didn't, acted like a snob because we were watering the plants in the lawn and garden, and she acted stupid by taking her buggy over the hose, whatever. They could conceivably look at that and go, he's criticizing a customer. That's not permitted. Especially if that customer finds out. Take, for the example, the story recently of a waitress who was fired because she complained about a person who didn't tip. And I don't know if they named her or not, but basically it got back to the customer. The customer was pissed off, printed it off, went to the restaurant, and the restaurant, I believe it was Texas Roadhouse Restaurant, fired the waitress. It is basically a bulletin board. If you put something on the bulletin board and people can read it, and the wrong people read it, it could come back to haunt you. Not everybody you friend on Facebook is your friend. Remember that. But as for Anthony Cumia, he should have seen it coming. I mean, you event like that, you say something like that, you go off like that, and a story like that takes off. You know, it could very well be that he doesn't mind this one bit. He can leave SiriusXM, go do his own thing. Don't have any bosses to go over him and such. Get the kind of sponsors that will stick with him. Who the hell knows? You know, Opie and Jim Norton, I think they'll be fine. I think they're going to continue the show under a new name, obviously. It will be interesting, and I'm going to try and tune in on Monday morning to see how they respond. If they respond. If it's just, well, Anthony is no longer with the show, we can't go into it, blah, 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 blah. If they say something like that, then they've been told by their bosses to not talk about it. But if they are allowed to talk about it, if they defend him, or will they throw him under the bus? That I don't know. I don't want to throw Anthony under the bus because I don't believe Anthony is a full-blown... trust me, I've seen my fair share of racist in my time. I've seen people... I've known people who will talk great to a black person in company in front of them. As soon as the black folks are away, they'll start throwing the N-word around like crazy and consider black folks to be nothing more than pond scum. I call them stealth racist. And trust me, I've seen my fair share of them over the time. And there's a friend of mine that unfortunately I've lost track with, who's an African American, who gave me the greatest example. He said, I'd rather have somebody who was somewhat racist and at least I knew where they stood, than have somebody who acted like they were my friend and behind my back were the most violent, virulent, pathetic racist out there. Because at least you know what you're getting. Anthony, unfortunately, paid the price for venting on Twitter. And he's, unfortunately, out of a job. He'll probably still be in the media on Fox News doing Red Eye and maybe doing some other stuff. He'll probably have his own podcast. Hell, he may have his own radio talk show. Conservative radio talk show. Who the hell knows? This may be the thing that launches it. But it remains to be seen. A lot of crazy things have happened this week. We're going to do an RSN podcast here in a little bit. Stay tuned for that. But for everybody here at RSN Radio, like we always like to say, good night, good luck, and may the good news be yours.